This is a podcast for the living.
And we're your hosts,
Graham
and Saul.
And we're here to share with you all kinds of creative,
educational,
inspirational,
straight from the heart
content that could change your life.
What?
Podcast.
Rickety podcast.
Brain juice.
You about to
Brain
get
gasms.
educated.
Brain stuff.
We are the Chabot Bros, and this is going to be podcast episode 2.
Number dos.
Number dos, correct?
We can't look over here. We put a screen here now, and
Because we're professionals.
we're professionals, and the screen is very distracting.
Well, it's yourself.
But because we're professionals, we're not going to look over there. So if a person if you're thinking, you have to think up here somewhere.
I'm not worried about it at all. This is a you thing.
It's a me problem.
Yeah.
It's not really even a problem. It's more just like, okay.
It's a new thing. Yes.
So
So, you're going to start our timer?
yeah, I'm going to do it.
So, if you haven't watched the first episode, basically we use a phone timer to make sure that our episodes are around 20 minutes. Because just to start with, later on we might do longer episodes, but for now we're trying to keep it concise, pithy.
So we tried this time to actually make some choices ahead of time, and we want to talk about addiction because we have both experienced quite a chunk of it in our lives, and we're both coming through. I mean, personally, I'm on the end of about 10 years of chronically smoking weed on and off. Mostly on, more than off.
Good
that's
point.
For sure.
Good honesty.
More on than off.
Well, let me just start by saying that I think we live in a society where addiction is kind of the norm.
It's commonplace everywhere.
It's commonplace, yeah. We're all like addicted to something, whether it's like coffee,
Fucking social media.
Social
Here we
media.
are drinking our other crack.
So there's all these levels of addiction, and sometimes you don't even know. And I think
Often you don't even know.
And I think weed is one of those because I had my own addictions with the weeds, and before weed it was video games for me.
The weed thing is so subtle. Like it's so. It's not as a problem. It's not spoken of really as a problem in society. Like if you're addicted to heroin, people will let you know that it's probably not a good thing.
Yeah.
But you can be addicted to weed and no one will say anything about it the whole fucking time.
Yeah.
They'll keep their mouths shut. They may be judging you, but
They're probably not going to have an intervention.
no, yeah,
Per se,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, you'll still be functional.
And I think video games are the same. Like I think they're both the silent killers
Yeah.
of addictions.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, like when I played video games, for me it was an escape. But for me, life was monotone. I was void of color because like overstimulation is something that happens really quick when you game all the time. So all of a sudden for me, the game was so satisfying. It rewarded me in all the ways that you would want to be rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
So then life could not keep up.
Yeah.
Life could never reward me in those ways.
Yeah, it satisfies, like, the endorphin release that you're getting from playing video games, and the way they design these things nowadays.
Yeah.
You'll get games where, like, most game companies that I've read about have behavioral psychologists on staff, the same way that, a social media company or a casino will have on staff as well, because, it makes sense for them to keep players in the game. The more engaged we are in the game, the more we want to play, the more reward we get from it, the more we go back to it over and over again.
Yeah. It's definitely rooted in psychology. Mm-hmm. Well, let's just take a step back here, and let's just go through a bit of your story.
Sure. Yeah, sure. We'll go through yours too.
Of course.
Okay, well.
You weren't always smoking the.
No, I wasn't.
Bud.
And I know we're gonna plan to do like a more in-depth of this, so I won't go too deep on it. But what I will say is, so I spent most of my childhood not smoking weed, being very active, very engaged, very out in the world.
I just had a quick thought I want to throw in.
Please.
Is to anybody who currently smokes weed, like we're not.
It's not downplaying it. We're not putting it down. Like it's just another perspective is all.
Yes, this is our own personal experience with it, and we both know plenty of people who are smoking and aren't acting how we acted when we smoked.
For sure.
So
Definitely. It's person to person.
It's person to person. So this is our experience with marijuana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So when I was, I guess 19 years old, I began experiencing anxiety for the first time in my life, which is, I think, abnormal. I think most people experience it younger, but I was pretty much fearless up until that point. Then I didn't really know how to deal with it, so as a coping mechanism, I started smoking weed, which, in hindsight, maybe not the best decision, but it was what I needed at the time. And so I began smoking lightly, and then video games came into the picture. Started smoking a little more heavily with a friend of mine who was quite invested in the weed smoking world as well. And then it kind of detracted me from the things that I was focused on. In my intuition, I knew all along, there was this voice internally that was constantly telling me, hey, you should stop, stop while you're ahead. I tried over 10 years of smoking, I probably tried 30 different times to stop smoking. Sometimes I would make it a month, sometimes I'd make it a day, sometimes whatever it was. The most I think I ever made it was 3 months, and then all it took was caving one fucking time. And the moment that I caved that one time, it was done. Because the next day, the justification that was in my mind was, oh, well, you smoked yesterday, right? So what's the harm in smoking one more time today? And then you'll start up again, and you won't be smoking after that, so no problem. And then the same thing repeats. And that's the crazy thing about addiction, is that when you give in that one time, that's why you have in Alcoholics Anonymous, they say, take it one day at a time. You only have to beat the day that you're in. Anyway, so yeah, it was 10 years of self-medication, and
we like to call it a soother.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A soother, because it solves things in the same way that a fucking soother does for a baby.
It's like you're tantruming, or like these struggles come up in life, and instead of like facing them, dealing with them, you're just like, I'm just gonna forget they ever exist. That's how it worked for us anyway, because mine was very similar.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about your background with it.
I guess to go back to the video game thing for me is, I knew right away when I was young I was unhappy, simply because I looked around at the world around me, and like none of the adults I knew were necessarily happy. Like our parents were in the grind, and the teachers at school, I looked at them and it's like, well, you're not happy. So I guess I was an emotionally intelligent child, and that totally sucked, because I just became depressed based on that, and I had no examples of happiness to look forward to. So all of my hope was sucked up. So then I just didn't care. I just disappeared, and I wanted to just tap out of this reality and not be a part of it. And video games just provided that escape. So we started playing World of Warcraft when I was in elementary school, and all of a sudden World of Warcraft took the priority over school. I remember there was days, specifically in grade 8, I would pretend to be sick a lot and stay home and game all day long, and those were my favorite days. Not being around people, not blah, 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 just literally gaming. And so I didn't have the motivation to eat healthy. I didn't have the motivation to do anything.
Because the game was satisfying,
everything.
Was giving you everything that you perceived that you needed.
All encompassing. I was so numb. I would stay up past midnight every night, wake up, go to school, and all I would do at school is wait to get home to play the game again. That's really all my life was. So that's why I say, like, I really was living in a monotone world. I had no emotions. I had no attachments. When mom would be like, we're having a movie night, or like, we're going to a family, I dreaded that so much. If we had to go to like a family event, the whole time, my addiction was just pulling me back to the game, so I couldn't focus. I had anxiety because I couldn't hear what people were saying, because it couldn't satisfy me enough. And yeah, there was just so many years of that's who I grew up being. And so after high school, just to fast forward through this and basically say that, yeah, monotone, no color in life, no whatever, didn't feel like much creativity. I didn't give a shit about anything. I actually remember in grade 12 basketball, Jason Tran, who Graham played basketball with, took me aside, and no one had ever really spoke to me this much, so props to you, Jason. But he was just like, I was on the senior team. Sorry, this was in grade 11. I was on the senior team. Or, no, backtracking. Grade 10, I got invited to the senior team.
Yeah.
And he just took me aside and he's like, Matt, it just doesn't seem like you take anything in life seriously. It just doesn't, like, when are you going to take this seriously?
Good on him.
Yeah. And it definitely made me think, and I was just like, my defense mechanism was acting like I didn't give a fuck, was not giving a fuck, because if I cared, then I could get hurt, blah, blah, blah. So I just didn't give a fuck, played these games, and then moved to Vancouver, was in a relationship where she didn't like weed smoking, and so I had to be all sneaky about it when I did smoke weed with you guys. And then when she broke up with me, I was like, oh, I can just smoke whenever. So went right into the smoking all day, every day thing, and then that video game addiction and weed addiction together, oh my God.
Brutal. I know. Brutal.
Destructive. Brutal. And then you throw junk food in there, and it was just like a blur of time where I was so unhappy, and basically...
Yeah. But yet, you know, while you're in the game, while you're in the moment, it feels so good, so satisfying.
Yes.
You wake up the next day and you feel like, what the fuck? And then the thoughts start to take over and let you know how miserable you actually feel.
100%. What pulled me out personally, it was my dream for music. It was always lingering there in the background, and when we were like at that house gaming all the time and never getting anything done musically, not making that progress, I started to go crazy, and I started to like, I don't know, it started to pull me out, because it was like, I know what I'm capable of, and here I am, 20-some years old, not living my capabilities, and instead living addiction.
Yeah, knowing that you have all this ability inside of you, and yet you're giving into your addiction, yet you're just doing, you know, if you had a reason, if you were wounded, or if you had a shitty childhood in which you deserved, like you needed to use it as a tool, it would have been an easier justification for yourself. But when you have been given what you wanted, and you've been given the support, and you've had the opportunity, and then you still end up self-sabotaging, it feels a lot. I mean, I'm sure it feels shitty on either side, but it feels really shitty in that spot to be in that kind of place.
Part of the journey. That's all I'll say is, on this side of it, part of the journey.
For sure, yeah, on this side of it. So to bring it back to where we are now, we both stopped smoking weed around the same time. And okay, some interesting points. The first week is certainly the most difficult, and then after that it's almost not even a thing. And it seems that way with any addiction. It seems like with the video games, it's a week and then it's gone. You don't even need it anymore. Sometimes even less, a couple days, you don't even really need it anymore. The way that it changes things, it doesn't fix anything at all. And that's the weirdest part about it. It's like you'd think that you have solved all your problems because you remove one, and then you realize that what you've actually done is gone and created you've been using it as a tool to push your problems down, and now you've moved it out of the way, and now all your problems are starting to bubble up to the surface.
Yeah, because when you're in it, like for me, for 5 years plus, I was like, if I quit weed, then I will, it's like it solves, then I'll be able to be who I'm trying to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, like it's easier to be that person now, or it's easier to stay consistent, but it's exactly what you said. Like, it's just like as soon as you quit, all of a sudden you can now begin.
Yeah.
It's like before you couldn't get into anything,
Yeah.
but now you can actually begin the process, begin the journey. So it's just a starting place.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a fix anything.
No.
You're fixing one problem so that you can reveal the other problems.
Dude, that's like 100% why it's so hard. That's why when I had tried to stop so many times, it was like you get to a certain point and it feels worse. You feel worse. After you get past the addiction, then you're like, wow, now I feel really shitty because now I can really see all the fucking things that I've been neglecting or avoiding in my life. But once you get past that and you start being able to go, okay, but now I can actually deal with the shit because I can see it. That's where it becomes incredibly empowering.
Then you start to make progress.
Yeah.
And you start to make daily progress.
Yeah.
Because you're consistent and you see a problem and you start to know how to deal with your problems and face them. And it's the consistency thing. Like, yeah, with weed, I could never be consistent. With video games, I could never be consistent. But now I do feel consistent to myself and who I am.
Yeah.
I feel
True to yourself.
Yeah. I feel stronger as who I am, and I feel like every day I'm growing. Like, I think I was definitely growing when I was smoking, but now I feel like, oh my God, I am growing so much every single day, unlimitedly, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And then I can actually keep track of that progress a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's kind of our journey with addiction. Quick summarized version of it. And I think we're both a lot happier, a lot better to be around too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It does things to you that you wouldn't even notice is the most interesting part. You don't even know when you're in the addiction. There's no way to see what you would be like on the outside of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what we talked about in the first episode. You don't know what you don't know. You can't see something that you haven't been. You can't see the self that you could be when you're away from the thing that's pulling you. Because the way that the substance or whatever the addiction is, like we said, whatever the fuck it is, doesn't matter. The way that satiates you, it fills this void, it fills this part of you that you really should be filling in more healthy ways or other alternative ways.
Oh, and that's a great point, because when it's like almost when you're smoking weed every single day. I shouldn't say almost. I should say 100%.
Every single day.
When you're smoking weed,
or whatever addiction.
Whatever,
right?
yeah. Whatever it could be Netflix.
Yeah. It could be Netflix.
Yeah. And basically you get to a certain point of the night or the day, and then you go to your vice. Mm-hmm. So like it hit a certain, maybe I'd be productive a little bit, but I'd hit a certain point and then it'd be like, hey, I'm tired, now it's time to smoke. And then I go into like totally unproductive point or whatever, but basically instead what happens is when you're not filling with a void of a vice, you hit that point of resistance, and instead of like filling it with something, you literally just sit there in that discomfort or that boredom, and you're like, oh, now I gotta go for a walk. Mm-hmm. Now I gotta meditate. Now I gotta read a book. Mm-hmm. It pushes you more to healthy things. Obviously there's other vices, like for me I watch a lot of YouTube. Yeah. And I mean, I'm getting a lot of information. I owe my current career to that. 1 minute? Yeah. I owe my current career to my addiction to YouTube, because it's addiction to taking in information.
Well, and it's very challenging because life is but a series of addictions. And you could argue if you looked at or talked to or read any of the theories of yogis of the past, you'd see that the most well-renowned people out there are those who have overcome addiction at its fullest. And so literally there are honored gurus in India's past who like have bypassed the need to eat. They only eat. From autobiography of a yogi, in one of the last chapters, they're talking about this woman who trained herself. She used a yogic technique to overcome all food, and she just eats. She absorbs light frequencies, and that's how she's surviving. She's lived 50 years off of that, and been studied by Indian scientists. And so there's a whole lot of overcoming addiction that needs to happen in this world, which is a very challenging thing.
There's a lot of things we think we need, but we don't actually need. And a lot of times, if you just sit, timer's about to go off here. We're gonna let it?
Yeah, we're gonna let it, and then we're gonna rap.
Ready?
Yep.
Oh, you gotta let it ding ding ding.
Oh,
Whoa. Timer. Yeah.
Stop.
Oh no. I think that's a great thing to sort of wrap on, is that to summarize all of this, when it comes to addiction, there's so little that we actually need, and if you're able to build the skill of sitting in silence, you can actually do that for this is obviously extreme, but you can just do that for 8 hours a day. But
you can, yeah.
To be more realistic with it, like what I'm using is when I reach those points of tension, which we all have in this modern day, you get tired, you feel some pain in your body or whatever, something's taking your focus, you can't keep working, or maybe you have anxiety, whatever it is that's creating this point of tension, which you want to then go to some sort of vice. If instead you're using that almost as like a training bell, every time you get the intention of like, oh, I want to look at my phone to look at social media, or oh, I want to go on YouTube. Instead, use that as like how they train the Pavlov's dog or whatever. It's like a bell. It's like ding, 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 ding. It's like, oh, now I must take 5 minutes and go into my heart, or take 1 minute and go into my heart. Even if it's like the smallest amount, even if you're like, I really want to open up Instagram, but instead, for a minute, or 30 seconds, I'm going to put my phone down and just sit and do nothing.
Yeah.
And if you just do that, eventually you start to train yourself to take a moment for yourself. Because half the time, we're just going into other people, we're going into distraction, we want to look at somebody else, we want to experience somebody else's thing, but then we're taking away our unique abilities, and we're taking away the fact that we have so much to learn from ourselves, and we ignore that. You could just only learn from yourself for 30 years and not even be close to what you can learn. You don't actually need to learn from anybody else. You don't need to distract. You don't need to watch Netflix. You got Netflix right here in your heart, in your soul. Close your eyes, enjoy. Eat some popcorn, or don't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only other thing to say then is that, we will not, like, no one is going to overcome all addiction, but there is certainly a large amount that we can overcome. And especially in a day and age where literally everything, like if you still have notifications on your phone, fucking silence all of that, as like, for the love of baby Jesus, like silence it, because it makes such a difference, and you'll notice it within a week. You'll notice right away how not having those notifications, not feeling like you need to respond as soon as you get a message, it changes you. And if you think you're not getting an endorphin rush from those notifications, you're kidding yourself. I've even thought about something like eliminating, oh no, I got so distracted by this text. See? It just happened right
Literally,
in front of you. I just
that
got
was
a text.
a good moment.
That was a great, I literally lost my train of thought because it was silent too, but I saw the light.
No, I'll do that all the time. I see in meetings when my phone will go off, and I see the person that I'm in a meeting with, I see them even look at my phone because it's
Yeah.
not about anyone's
No.
phone. It's just like an instinct thing.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's a great answer.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But yeah, silence that shit. But also probably just fucking turn them off entirely would be another good idea.
Here and there, yeah, going silent tech-wise is important.
Yeah. Sweet. Episode 2.
Thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and like and do all that stuff.
All that stuff.
We're just trying to build this up. We enjoy doing this and we want to keep doing it. So thanks.
Oh my God, now we're getting
Peace.
We're
getting
buzzed everywhere.
All good.
Okay, sweet.
Peace.
Peace.